Hey everyone, my name is Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate demo for the piece I call Apparition. So this is another in the 3 images that I did for Tom DeLonge's new property, Strange Times, it's being developed right now, I don't know when it's coming out or anything. And this is done a long time ago, but I wanted to walk you guys through the development process. And now this is going real fast, so let me catch up to it. You can see I did like a super loose sketch, and then another loose sketch where you almost can't even tell what's going on, and then I jump back to this sketch. When I'm trying to really find something, especially when there's like a layout or a framing, this is really how I work. It's a lot of really rough stuff. But then here, this is where I decided, yeah, okay, this is one that I actually want to drill down on. So this is still super messy, but this is really just to pass the client and say, hey, how about something like this? Does this interest you? You can see that there was the ghost. He had a big beard. He was sort of this old-timey ghost, and then I decided to take the head off, but then the beard was just too distracting. It was too much, so I removed the beard, throw in a window in the background just for some atmosphere, and then move to a new idea. In this idea, I wanted something that was with a TV, going with like a poltergeisty type thing, and having something come through the TV that's scary. And so at first I went with like a very generic skull, like a ghosty skull thing. And you can see here I'm throwing the kids into the foreground just so that we can get some reactions. I've got the one guy behind the TV so that we can see a face clearly. Just to add in this sort of like ghostly skeletal face pulling out of the TV. And then I abandon that and I say, hey, if I'm going to do something TV based, maybe I should do something that's like just a straight rip of Sonico from The Ring. I just thought that could be good. I mean, at first I do this sort of weird thing and that's not really working. And then I'm like, okay, Sonico, that's perfect. I mean, she's like the most pop culturally relevant thing that comes out of a TV probably. So I did this shot, and this is all very tight. Part of the reason why the framing is tight is because it was a fairly tight deadline, so I was trying to reduce the amount of details that I was having to go into. So I have her. And I also wanted her to be featured prominently. I didn't want it to be pulled out too much. And then I've got some of the kids. I'm starting to pack them in here as tightly as possible, get some expressions on everyone's faces. And I really liked the way the Sonico type character looked. But then I actually got some feedback from the client, in this case Tom, saying, hey, let's actually pull it out a little bit more so we can see all the kids. That's what that last shot was. It was me pulling it out. And then I said, well, you know what, the one thing though that I don't like about it in general was I didn't like the framing of it. I like the idea of her coming out towards you more. So I went back to the previous idea of the skull coming out of the television. You can see here I'm just very quickly cleaning up this TV. And then I start detailing the skeleton, and I'm like, well, you know, if I like this framing, why don't I take Sonico and put her in this framing? So in a second, you'll see I abandon the skull idea, and I go into Sonico coming straight forward out of the TV. And that's what this is right here. So the exact same premise, but this time we get her coming towards us like the skeleton, and instead of her being horizontal. I think the other thing was nice for showing the kids expressions, but it wasn't good as far as communicating the like terror. So you can see I'm being a little bit cleaner here with the lines. That's because I really wanted to sell what was happening. So I wanted to get a little bit out of the messier stage and a little more into something that could be readable by someone who wasn't me. Now, something that you might be wondering, I get this question a lot, how long did that piece take? A lot of the time I don't really know how long they take, but something that's important to know right here is that this sort of fast idea sequence should be fairly quick. I think it was 30 minutes of me sketching all the ghost ideas, the Bigfoot idea, and the alien idea, which will be in a future video. So that way you can just sort of get through some stuff quick, pass it to the client, and then get some feedback. So the feedback that I ended up receiving on all of this was, actually, I think that the old-timey ghost one is probably the best one. So before I went into the final illustrations, I did this pass right here, which was just tightening the whole thing up so that I could pass that along and say, okay, just to verify, this is what it looks like when it's all tightened up. Is this what we're going with? So at this point, we've got Sonico and weird skull thing coming out of the TV all off the table. Tom also liked this one because it was pulled back more on the ghosts. We could see a lot of the ghosts. We could see more of the background and like the situation that we're dealing with. So this, which I think is all like the right way to go. So what I did after I finished that ghost, that sort of rough of it, was that would have been a snapshot where I would have sent that to the client to say like, okay, is this where we're going with it? And of course that is the way we ended up going with it. So here we are going into final lines, tight lines. One thing to know is that since I knew this was a ghost and I was going to do certain effects with him, the ghost from the beginning of clean lines is on its own layer, and then the boys are all on their own layer, and then the background is on its own layer, because I knew I wanted to run certain effects on this. Here on the, we're going to zoom in on the pants and the knee, so you can see just that, the little bone, the knee bone work. And now we'll jump up to the collar. You can see that there was some stylization going on, not anatomically correct here. It would be fun to redo this guy someday as a zombie instead of a ghost, just because he's really fun, and since he's a ghost I made him all one color basically, and it'd be fun to go back and give him like real colors and make him look like more like a zombie. Now we do his corsage. You can see I quickly block it in there and then turn off the layers so that I can more clearly see what I'm working with. And then I can turn those layers back on, erase away, and then merge that all together. Really, the digital medium, it's not that it allows for mistakes, although it of course does. It's more that it allows you to plan a little bit less. You certainly have to plan, you have to be aware, and I mean that's what a lot of art is, it's planning and then executing, but it allows you to say like, oh shit, I need a thing there, and then you just sort of do it and then clean it up. So now here is his hand. You could see in the rough you just had this big cartoony, almost like Warner Brothers-esque hand, and so I wanted to go in and actually give him more of a developed hand with more anatomy to it and in a more interesting position. It also sort of adds a little bit to his manic read, how you read him, because he's very stiff, but then like his face is kind of going crazy, and then his hand is in a crazy position, and that adds this sort of like energy to him. The black fingernails I think are just kind of fun. But it also adds a little something extra when it goes into the more glowy state. I should talk about that a little bit before we get there. What we're going to do to achieve the glow for this is we're going to colorize the lines blue, and then we're going to have a fill, and we're going to certainly, the body will have a fill that we'll mess with, but then the lines will just get duplicated and then blurred, and keeping the lines bright like that will end up selling the glow overall, and it'll make him just look very ghostly, really. Okay, so now we move up to the hand holding the head and just flesh that out a little bit more, position it a little bit better, get the hair to reconcile with the hand now that the hand has a certain look to it, and by look I mean positioning. It's got a certain positioning now, so we need to reconcile the hair of the head with the hand. So now we're just finishing up the head. Get those sunken in cheeks. Now he doesn't have the beard and the mustache from that original rough, so he'll read a little bit more cleanly. And then by getting those big sunken in eyes, he just reads really kind of funny and kind of cool and creepy at the same time. And then we get the dripping blood. I'm working on my English. Anyways, now the foreground characters. Here, what I tried to do was I wanted to see how much expression I could get in them, even though they're facing away. This guy is the one who sort of gets the most opportunity to turn his head towards the camera. But as I go, I actually find like I can force a couple other characters to get an expression. The guy that's sort of like closest to us and the guy all the way to the left, they're not gonna be able to get any kind of an expression. But what I'll do is I'll take the goggles guy, the guy that wears the night vision goggles, who's currently roughed in all the way to the left. He's gonna get swapped to the other side, where there's more space in the illustration, and that way I can do a little bit more of his head. So as you can see, what I was saying earlier about trying to keep some of the detail down so that I could get the piece done, that was still maintained. The ghost was fairly quick, even though he's got some detail going on, like he's not in too complicated of a position or anything like that. The characters in the foreground are where I get to save a chunk of my time, not having to do everybody's face and not having to do a complete face for anyone really, as well as the background is mostly implied, so it was pretty good overall. And the ghost, I should mention, he doesn't really get many coloring details, and everybody else being lit by the ghost means that they're mostly in shadow. So a lot of reduced complexity in order to speed up the whole process. So we got that dude in the bottom now, so we get his face. And the other guy to the left, yeah, technically you can kind of see his eye a little bit, but that's not too much. And now we'll switch the goggles guy over to the other side, and he'll get an opportunity to have some amount of a reaction. And now we'll jump into doing the background, which this was before the shape tool was in, so I was using like my circle brush in conjunction with just being able to do straight lines, things like that. And so building the two identical windows, placing them next to each other, that lets me cut down on some of the complexity. And then filling in this background the way that I do, where it stays a little bit scratchy, was nice for just speed purposes. And now we're just cleaning up all the overlaps, and then we get to move into the coloring. Now all of the things in this have some sort of a color. All of the lines have some sort of a color, and then they're set to a multiply. Except the ghost is just solid because he's going to be the one that gets blurred. So he's got a lot of brightness that he has to have. So right now we've got the fill, the main solid that I'm putting in for him. You can also see in the background where the shadows cast, I left a little bit of space for the glow to highlight his neck. So that gets a different flat. The head gets a different flat than the rest of his body, so I can overlap it. And then there'll be some last minute tweaks too that we'll do there. But it's basically just that duplicated line and then blurred. Now for the foreground characters, I like the Bigfoot piece, I'm just matching their flats to what their cast flats look like. And then after I get them all flatted, I'll do the select paint, select clear method, which is linked down below, to shadow them. And again, since they're being lit by the ghost, it's a very fast flatting process here. Okay, we get the last dude done on his flats. And now we'll go into the shadow layer. So first they get a layer on top of them that darkens them and colorizes a little bit just to bring them into the scene. And now the guy on the top right, he's on the lowest set of layers, so I'm starting with him. If you follow the Select Paint, Select Clear video that I've linked down below, then you can understand how I then just proceed through the rest of this. Going layer by layer and selecting it, clearing it from the shadow layer, selecting it again, painting, etc., and going through the whole thing. Again, since they're all being lit by the ghost, characters like that guy that's really close to us right there, he gets mostly just shadow. It's much faster to color in a character like that. There I just add a bit of bright blue to them and then delete away where the shadow is. Now in the background, just adding a little bit of extra color. And then some shine on the windows, adding a, and then here I just added some extra to the ghost, some darkening on the fingernails, in the mouth, around the eyes, and then there's some nice ethereal stuff moving through there, a backlight on the characters that's just really soft, changing the eye color of the ghost, and then throwing in a tree outside just to give some extra depth to the piece. And then I'll delete away using the layers that I already have there for the window. And that's it. It's, I think, a piece that seems maybe more complex, maybe it doesn't, but it probably seems more complex than it actually is when you get into it. All of these were done with fairly simplistic methods in order to get them done quickly. So I want to thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. Leave a comment if you can, and I'll see you on the next video. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.